All right, let's dive into some deep waters today.
Deep waters indeed.
We're tackling Plato's three waves, from the Republic.
Oh, yeah.
That part that everyone says is like so important and you have to really pay attention to it.
Right.
We're going to find out why.
Yeah, it's like the greatest hits of philosophical mind benders.
Yeah.
All packed into, just a couple pages.
And just a heads up, these waves aren't like the ones at the beach. You know what I mean?
Right.
More like these metaphorical tsunamis that Socrates just throws out there.
Yeah.
To just shake up completely our ideas about justice and how to make a good society.
Yeah, how to create a just society.
He's basically just hanging out with his buddies Adeimantus and Glaucon,
Yeah.
and saying, hold on to your togas because things are going to get wild.
It's really important to remember that Socrates is on this quest to define justice.
Right.
To figure out how to actually build a society where it truly reigns supreme.
Mm-hmm.
And to do that, he's not afraid to challenge people. He's not afraid to challenge assumptions, even if it means proposing ideas that sound completely bonkers at first.
So first wave crashing in gender equality.
All right.
Now remember, we are in ancient Greece.
Right.
Women pretty much stayed at home.
Yeah, weaving or something.
But Socrates throws out this radical idea.
Okay.
What if women are just as capable as men?
He doesn't just throw it out there though.
Right.
He really lays out a well-reasoned argument saying that roles in society should be based on ability and not on something arbitrary like gender.
Right. And he uses this great example about watchdogs.
Yeah.
He's like, look, we don't tell a female watchdog she can only guard the puppies, right?
Right.
Both male and female dogs can protect the flock.
Protect the flock.
So he's saying, why are we making these distinctions with humans?
That's classic Socrates using these everyday examples to illustrate these really profound philosophical points.
Right.
And what's really fascinating is that he's connecting this idea of gender equality directly to justice.
Yeah.
He's basically saying if we're really going to build a just society, we can't ignore half the population.
Yeah.
We can't ignore half the population's potential.
It makes you wonder, are we still riding this first wave today?
Yeah.
Trying to reach that shore of true equality.
Are we there yet?
I mean, we've come a long way, but
It feels like we're still working on it.
yeah, obviously we're still grappling with these issues today.
It's like Socrates is looking through the centuries and saying, yep, still working on that one, huh?
Okay, so maybe that first wave was a little choppy, but hold on tight, because wave number 2 is going to make that one look like a ripple in a bathtub.
Oh, boy.
Socrates proposes that to achieve true justice, we need to wait for it.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
Abolish the traditional family,
What?
at least among the ruling class.
Yeah, he just drops that bombshell, and I can just imagine the jaws hitting the floor in ancient Athens.
Yeah, I'm picturing togas flying everywhere.
But before we dismiss Socrates as some kind of ancient family-hating anarchist, we need to understand his reasoning.
Yeah.
Remember, he's obsessed with justice.
He is?
And he's worried that family ties, as powerful as they are, they can also lead to corruption.
Like that whole nepotism thing?
Exactly. He's concerned that rulers will favor their own children, even if it means bending the rules.
Oh, right.
Or, turning a blind eye to injustice.
So he's basically saying, look, if you want to lead, you can't be playing favorites.
Yeah.
You got to put the good of the city above your own family.
Right.
Which is a pretty radical idea.
It is.
Even today.
And to be fair to Socrates, he's not saying that family is inherently bad or anything like that. He's just saying that in this ideal, just society, those in power can't let personal loyalties cloud their judgment.
He's basically pushing us to examine how much our families shape our sense of what's right and wrong.
It's a profound question, isn't it?
It is.
And one that still resonates with us today.
Mm-hmm.
Think about how much inherited wealth and privilege still influence our world.
Totally.
It really does.
Okay, so we've had gender equality, abolishing the family, at least for the rulers.
Yeah.
What could possibly top those?
Buckle up, because wave number 3 is where Socrates really lets his philosophical freak flag fly.
Okay.
He says that the key to a truly just society is philosopher-kings.
Philosopher-kings. I mean, it sounds like something out of a Monty Python skit, right?
Yeah.
Bring out your dead and your philosophers who want to run the government.
It does sound a little out there. I get it.
Yeah.
But remember, Socrates is dead serious about justice.
He is.
And he believes that the only people who can truly lead a just society are those who are deeply in love with wisdom and knowledge. In other words, philosophers.
So he's not talking about the philosophers who just like sit around in their armchairs, stroking their beards,
No.
pondering the meaning of life.
Not exactly. He's talking about individuals who have dedicated their lives to the pursuit of truth and understanding, who are driven by a desire to know what is good and just, and who are capable of applying that knowledge to the real world.
I guess it makes sense in a way. If you want someone to make just laws, wouldn't you want someone who deeply understands what justice even is?
That's exactly Socrates' point.
Okay.
He argues that most rulers are motivated by things like power, wealth, personal gain.
Right.
But a true philosopher-king would be driven by a completely different set of values.
Okay.
They would be guided by reason, by a desire to create a harmonious and just society for everyone.
But let's be real. How many philosophers do you know who are like lining up to take on like the burdens of leadership?
Yeah.
They seem more like the contemplate in the quiet garden type.
That's true. It's not exactly a job description that attracts the masses, but that's kind of the point.
Okay.
Socrates recognizes that finding these true philosopher-kings would be incredibly rare.
Yeah.
But he's using this idea as a way to highlight the qualities we should be looking for in our leaders.
So it's less about actually having Plato reading philosopher-kings running around and more about striving for leaders who embody those qualities of wisdom, justice, and a genuine concern for the common good.
Precisely.
Okay.
Socrates is challenging us to think differently about leadership. What if instead of focusing on charisma or popularity, we prioritized wisdom and a deep understanding of justice?
I mean, it's not a bad idea. Just imagine turning on the news and seeing a philosopher calmly explaining like the latest policy decisions, citing Aristotle and Kant.
Now, that would be a deep dive I'd tune into.
Right. So we've tackled these three massive ways: gender equality, abolishing the family amongst the ruling class, and philosopher-kings.
Yeah.
It's been a wild ride.
It has.
But what did people back in the day think of all this? Was Socrates just preaching to the choir?
Well,
or did these ideas make some serious waves?
You better believe there was pushback.
Really?
Imagine dropping these ideas at your next family dinner.
Oh, yeah.
Multiply that by like 1,000, and you've got ancient Athens.
Yeah, I can imagine a few togas getting tangled up in that debate.
People question the practicality, the potential for chaos, even the sanity of Socrates.
It wasn't exactly smooth sailing for our boy Socrates.
Not quite.
Okay.
But remember, he was never one to shy away from a good philosophical brawl.
He did like to push the envelope.
In fact, he seemed to thrive on challenging people's assumptions and making them think deeply about these fundamental issues.
So even though these ideas seemed way out there, he was pushing the conversation forward, forcing people to consider what a truly just society might actually look like.
Exactly. And that's why the three waves are so important.
Okay.
They might not be like practical blueprints for building some utopia or anything.
Right.
But they're incredibly powerful thought experiments that really make us question the status quo.
Yeah.
And imagine alternative possibilities.
It's like he's saying, hey, don't just accept the world as it is. Let's get a little crazy, challenge our assumptions, and see if we can come up with something better.
And that's a challenge that is still relevant for us today.
Yeah.
I mean, we're still grappling with many of the same issues that Socrates raised all those centuries ago.
Totally. We're still debating gender roles. We're struggling with inequality. We're trying to figure out what good leadership even looks like.
It's like Socrates is looking down from philosophical heaven saying, yep, still haven't figured that out yet, have you?
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the three waves, I'm left with this lingering thought.
Okay.
If we could somehow transport Socrates to the 21st century, what would he think of our world? Would he be impressed by our progress? Or would he see us as still struggling to ride those same waves?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
And honestly, I don't know if there's a simple answer, but maybe by continuing to grapple with these timeless questions, we can get a little closer to that just society that Plato envisioned.
You know, what's interesting is that we've spent all this time talking about justice.
Yeah.
But we haven't really, defined what it means. It's like this big, mysterious concept that Socrates keeps throwing around, but he never really gives us a concrete definition.
You've hit on something really important there.
I have.
The entire Republic is essentially an attempt to define justice.
Okay.
But Socrates doesn't just give us like a simple answer.
Right.
He leads us on this kind of winding philosophical journey,
Mm-hmm.
forcing us to confront our own assumptions and biases along the way.
So it's more about the process of searching for justice than actually finding it.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's the beauty of Plato.
Yeah.
He doesn't give us easy answers.
Right.
He gives us the tools to ask the right questions, to engage in meaningful dialogue, and to continue that search for ourselves.
It's like he's saying, hey, the search for justice is a lifelong adventure.
It is.
So buckle up and enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
A lifelong adventure.
It is a lifelong adventure.
It's kind of fitting, isn't it? Talking about the Republic, this massive philosophical work. And it turns out the search for justice is just as big and complex as the book itself.
Absolutely. And I think that's why this three-waves section is so crucial.
Okay.
It really sets the stage for like everything else that Socrates talks about.
Right.
He's essentially saying, if we want to understand justice,
Okay.
we need to be willing to question everything.
Yeah.
To shake up all our assumptions about how society should work.
It's like he's giving us this philosophical toolkit.
Yeah.
And saying, all right, here you go.
Go build a just world.
Now go out there and build a just society. Good luck.
Good luck with that.
Exactly. He's not giving us a blueprint.
Nope.
But he is giving us those intellectual tools we need
Right.
to grapple with these really complex issues.
That's true.
So to wrap things up, what's the big takeaway from all this? What should our listeners be thinking about as they go about their day navigating their own personal republics?
I think the biggest takeaway is that the search for justice is an ongoing process. It's not something we just like achieve once and for all. It's something that we have to constantly strive for, you know?
Yeah.
Both individually and as a society.
It's like that saying, the journey is the destination.
Exactly. And along the way, you know,
Yeah.
we need to be willing to ask those tough questions, challenge our assumptions, and imagine new possibilities, just like Socrates did.
And maybe, just maybe, if we keep those waves crashing, we can make the world a little bit more zen.
I like that.
One ripple at a time.
One ripple at a time.
Well, folks, there you have it. A deep dive into Plato's three ways.
Hope you enjoyed it.
I hope your brains are feeling a little bit more philosophical.
A little more philosophical.
And maybe even a little bit more, just...
And who knows, maybe you'll even be inspired to run for office as a philosopher-king, of course.
Now, that's a campaign slogan I can get behind. Until next time, keep thinking, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.